You can also raise your hand if you want to contribute to the discussion or ask any questions. And one of our back-end team will unmute you. Also, we'll be checking the chat throughout. But Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We were just hoping to have like a reflection over Ramadan. It's a bit shorter today. So Hawazin, Ahmad and Ryan, if one of you just starts off with your reflection this Ramadan.
I don't mind going first since I haven't been on screen at all this year. So Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope everyone's well. Hope everyone's made the most of this Ramadan. Yeah, I think for me, it's been a bit of a weird one in the sense that last 2 or 3 years, obviously, as head of ops for RTP, I'm always like running around like a headless chicken, just trying to organise whether, you know, events at Tavistock Square and, you know, things at the tent, or last year when, you know, COVID had hit and we had 6 weeks to sort of put in the motions, you know, everything to, you know, deliver a successful virtual iftar. So this year, in terms of from my point of view on a volunteering front, it's been a lot quieter, and that's probably been more down to the fact that, you know, I think we've got such a good team in place, but also because my sort of day job has been quite busy, so I haven't been able to you know, give as much time. But within that, I found that, you know, I think the blessing in that is that, you know, I've actually been able to sort of dedicate a bit more time to myself, you know, actually, you know, read Quran, you know, try and go to Tarawih prayer, you know, obviously do my prayers on time, etc., and just spend time with family. You know, I think this is the first time in probably 5 or 6 years where I've actually gone back up north and done like a Ramadan with my parents, or done a couple of nights of Ramadan with my parents. Normally it's like the night before Eid, or, you know, a couple of nights, so, you know, things like that, quite nice. And, you know, I think what I've found is that, you know, sometimes it's with Ramadan, well, with, you know, especially this year, is that it's been, you know, it's been a good little reset button, because sort of next year I'm raring to go and I'm ready for, you know, actually doing physical events rather than virtual events again. But yeah, I mean, that's my sort of initial reflection. I think other things, I think in terms of one of the things I said to myself this year is also trying to make the most of it. And there's 2 or 3 things what have happened with that, you know, which are quite personal. Well, one of them is definitely personal, but and I'm happy to share. But I think before Ramadan, I hosted the author Naima B. Roberts, and she told me quite a powerful story of, you know, how you've got to show up, and you've also got to be in a situation where you, no matter what the situation is, you've always just got to have, you know, your faith in Allah, and, you know, keep that iman strong, and also just have tawakkul and everything. And one of the stories she shared was not her story, but of someone she knew, and essentially it was about you know, a child who, you know, a mother who had lost a child, and they were, you know, the parents were going to the hospital, you know, each day, and, you know, they were, you know, they said to him that, you know, whatever happened, you know, when the moment arrives, we're going to just, you know, go down to sujood and, you know, just pray 2 rak'ah for shukr, because the way what they said is that everything in this life is temporary, and, you know, having their child was just a temporary solution. Having their child in Akhira was a permanent, and what their attitude was is that they were just thankful just to spend a few years with their child. And when I listened to, you know, Naima B. Roberts say that, I was just like in absolute awe, because I was like, how can, you know, someone go through that? I'm not a parent myself, but, you know, I've got siblings, you know, I've got family, you know, and, you know, just, you know, looking and reflecting, you know, my own personal situation, you know, how would I have reacted to that? And realistically, when I asked myself that question, it wouldn't have been like that. So I think that was one of the things what, you know, sort of one of the reasons, well, one of the main things what sort of helped me prepare for this Ramadan. But then also there was a couple of other things, and the second thing was I think it was the last Jummah before Ramadan, and I went to you know, went to the Jummah where I listened to, you know, the Imam give the sermon, and he said something what I think a lot of people can relate to, and what he said is that look around you, and who was here last Ramadan who's no longer here. And that kind of hit home, and it hit home because it's the third reason, which is a personal, which is I lost my uncle last year, and I know that, you know, he would have given so much to being able to at least see one more Ramadan. And I think with that, I think for me, that's what those sort of 3 things which are intertwined, which have sort of made this Ramadan made me just put that extra effort in this Ramadan. When I've been tired or really wanting to go to bed because I've had an early start at work, and I know I've got to read a bit more Quran just to make sure I've read, what I need to read to make sure I can complete the Quran this Ramadan. That's been sort of my motivation. So for me, I think, this Ramadan, it's definitely been a blessed one. I've been grateful for it and I appreciate the experiences. And yeah, I think and the reason for that is because of the things that happened pre-Ramadan. So yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about your uncle. May Allah get grant in the Jannah. In terms of after COVID, when you go back to planning like physical events, do you think you're going to take anything away from like the COVID Ramadan and kind of implement it in your future Ramadans?
Oh, definitely. I think I think one of the things, one of the things I'm definitely going to do is try and do Tarawih in the masjid, during the week a lot more. I think before COVID, because of the nature of my work, I have like a lot of early starts and late finishes. So I almost felt like I had a ready-made excuse not to go to Tarawih prayer, or not to, not to just make that extra effort to go to the mosque, And I think last year, obviously all the mosques are shut because of COVID, and this year, going back to Tarawih, you realise how much you missed it, because I think you kind of took it for granted. I'd say to friends and family members, etc. You do really miss that vibe, and especially the last few years when Tarawih's been in the summer, and you catch up with people, go and pray Tarawih, and then as you leave, you'll just see see a few more people and have that human interaction, just see how people are getting on. And I think I definitely sort of miss that community spirit you have around Ramadan, and especially when everyone's leaving the mosque together, or people just go out their way to be a bit more courteous. So I think that's one of the things. That's from a personal thing. In terms of from a sort of a volunteering aspect, I think one of the things I'm probably going to do is actually, and from an RTP aspect, is just try and utilize the volunteers more in terms of actual skill set. I think that one thing that and I'm sure everyone can talk about this, especially in the core team, is one thing we'll say is that I don't think we've in the past utilized our volunteers as the best we could, and I think things like you hosting, I think I'd love to see you guys go out there and host when we've got 300-400 people packed out in a tent in Tavistock Square, or if we've got the Mayor of London at Trafalgar Square, because one thing I've always said with RTP is without the volunteers, RTP doesn't exist. Without the volunteers doing the work you guys do, that we don't have that spirit, that vibe we have, which gets everyone, makes everyone to go that extra further and help out. So yeah, I think those are sort of two main things I'd probably take from it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that COVID's really changed our perspective on Ramadan. It's also made us really appreciate community. Like I spent most of this Ramadan without like my parents, and just appreciate how something you take for granted all the time is not something that's a given. So yeah, I definitely think that there is a lot that we can learn moving forward and apply it.
I mean, I hope you
How
don't
about
mind.
you, Hussain? Like, what are your? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I hope you don't mind me asking you the question. What would you, I mean, what's your? When did you start volunteering for RTP? Like, what's your background in terms of volunteering for RTP?
I literally just started this Ramadan.
Okay, before this Ramadan, how had you been to an open iftar or?
Yeah, so like years ago when I was doing my undergraduate, I attended like one event, but at the time it's kind of like what you were saying about Tarawih. Like I kind of made an excuse. I was like, I do placement all the time. I always have work to do. I work in the weekends, so I was like, oh, I can't do it. But I truly do think that with COVID, it does highlight the fact that you can do anything if you just have to make the time for it. And that was kind of my reflection from that Ramadan, that I can do volunteering. I just have to manage my time better. But also because it's virtual and everything's virtual, I have everything at my fingertips. So it's a little bit of a different situation.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I think, this is, having like the reflection thing. I always love doing this with the volunteers because it does make it worth it when you are like, having, these endless, sort of email chains with, various people, or, come back and forth with, guest speakers, or, speaking, to supply chain, etc., in terms of delivering the event. And sometimes, things don't always go to plan, and you always have these last minute sort of, not problems, I'd say opportunities to find a solution is the best way I'd put it. So, when you go through, those stresses sort of on day in, day out, hearing, you guys, hearing back from you guys, hearing the feedback we get always makes it worth it. No, but yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I also think that if I hadn't volunteered this Ramadan for RTP, there's like a lot of things I wouldn't have seen. There's a lot of speakers I wouldn't have spoken to. And like with every speaker, you kind of go out with a certain insight. So I think you speak about different topics every night. So I think yesterday was like recognizing the Uyghur genocide. Before that, I'd hosted something about like social justice. Before that, I'd hosted something about Turkey. So it's like you listen to different people who are experts in some sort of field. And after that, you learn something that you can take away, like practice in your day-to-day life, or just think about and acknowledge. So I definitely think there is a lot to it. I think we do, yeah, I think there is a lot to it. And I think there's like some value to putting yourself out there and yeah, do more of these.
No, definitely. Do you mind asking? I've got one more question for you, actually. What's been your favorite one in terms of hosting?
Oh, that's difficult. I would definitely say the global iftar. So I'd done multiple events that night. I guess the combination of all three events. I think we started off and like it's kind of like what you said, sometimes things fall through. I think a few of the guest speakers fell through, but we had two really amazing guest speakers at the start of my event, and then the next event I did was Perth. We had like amazing share.
Yeah.
And the last guest speaker I had was like somebody who is like from this big art production company. It was like different speakers had a different insight to add to it, and all of them like really amazing. So I guess the global iftar.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, yeah, Sheikh Yahya, with the Perth one, I listened in that one, but I always remember like last year, and I think, Ryder will know this, when we spent the first 10 minutes just talking about not debating about whether samosas should be fried or baked. So he even joined in the conversation, which I thought, it's quite funny, because obviously this guy, such a respectable guy in the community. He's like, such a knowledgeable person. He's about to deliver some knowledge, and then we've got him chatting about samosas. So I just thought, what, like,
yeah, I think Sarah asked him about the deep fryer, and she's like, "What's your recommendation on it?" And so yeah, he's actually a very light-hearted person. It's amazing to have on. What about you, Hussain? What did you learn from this Ramadan, like doing the social media and RTP, and just kind of your general?
That's a good question. I think we learn to like take challenges and deal with it. Like really, like you get issues, you need to find solutions, and actually it's like my daily life. Like I'm engineering, so so like when we have an issue, we try to find solution in the best way to make people happy through the stars. And like as a volunteer, we know that we have people watching us. We've got people that could be lonely in London or whatever, in different places, and they connect. So try to provide this service and try to do it the best way that we can do. Now there's always like modification, last minute things happening, like today, for example. But so we try to find solution, and we do our best. And yeah, that's pretty good. I think I think people see our work like so what we're trying to achieve here is mainly to build bridges between people, and to get to know each other and to break isolation, because right now usually like we do iftars under the tent, but this year it's online, like previous year as well. And we try, and you know that like I'm volunteering usually as a social media officer, so we've got like people giving that feedback like for example last year saying thank you so much because I was by myself and I connect and I say hi and I feel less lonely actually by seeing you guys like speaking or having guest speakers in every night kind of things. So yeah, that's, I think we're using technology we try to use it in the best way as possible, and to have this gathering happening, even though it's hard to to be all together, but we try to do it in a safe way, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's with COVID, a lot of people have lost out, kind of like what we were saying earlier, or on that like important interaction that you have. And we do lose out the fact that Ramadan is actually a lot to do with like our communities and spending time with other people and enjoying your food and sharing that. And I think RTP does try and replace that. And although we can't perfectly replace that, definitely do try our best. And I think it is nice that some people can break their fast and just feel like they're a part of something bigger and they're not doing it alone. I definitely think the other thing is, like you said, I'm always really impressed by the volunteering team, because when something arises, I just don't know how to solve it. I'm like, okay, I guess that's it. But then like somebody in the volunteer team will always find a solution. So it's kind of like the global iftar. A few of the speakers fell through and just had to like zoom through and just kind of hope for the best. And like a few of the events, we've had like a few blips here and there, and the volunteering team has generally been amazing. And I'm always like surprised by how innovative you guys are solutions, because yeah,
I think this is
it's very good.
the volunteering team spirit, I would say, like to help each other. And I'm pretty sure that in a lot of Muslim organization and Muslims in other different type of organization in general, I think you need this team spirit. Otherwise, like you cannot achieve very well, and you cannot achieve a lot. I think there's a quote about that, like if you want to go far away, if you want to go quickly, go by yourself, but if you want to go far away, then you need to have many people with you and to help you. It's better, it's nicer as well, and you learn from one another, so that's nice. But yeah, we learn a lot from this open iftar. And one of the things that I learned as well is not about open iftar in general, but it's really, really important. Like it's more family oriented thing, like to keep in touch with people. Do not wait for like learning about someone being sick to call him or call her, call the name call or aunt or whatever. I think it's really important to keep contact with people and keep contact with the family, with friends, to see how they are. And yeah, to not, it's not because you cannot see them, you should be the one who call them. Like I've called my aunt last week, I think, something like this. She's in Tunisia, and she was so happy. I was not expecting it. I was like, oh my god. She was like, oh, thank you so much for calling me. Usually I'm not calling that much. My bad. I know. I call some of my uncles and aunts, and this one I'm not calling her that much. And I was, SubHanallah, she's isolated. I need to call her. What I'm doing right now, like, I need to call her, and I call her, and she was so happy. So you don't know how, I mean, how much good you do by calling people, keeping in contact, keeping in touch with your family, friends as well. Just a message, hey, how you are, how's your family, etc. And keeping this humanity, like this link between people. Even though we are far away, it's not because we're far away that we're not thinking about one another. Yeah, I think it's good to do, like, to keep that with me.
I think I definitely had that same reflection, because I'm usually the one relative that doesn't really call. It's a really bad, it's not the best thing about me, but I'm more of like meet a person face to face, and that's obviously not very possible nowadays. But I also realized that in COVID, everybody's kind of going through something, and it is a really good thing where possible to kind of check in with other people. So like, I think some people struggle mentally, some people struggle with like their jobs, whatever. I think it's another thing is it's really good for us to just check on each other where we can, so we can actually make sure that we don't feel isolated through this like weird experience that we're all going through.
Yeah, and at the beginning, I think it's hard. Like for me, I think one of the reasons why I'm not calling that much sometimes part of the family, and I'm guessing there is maybe a lot of people listening to us that are the same. It's like what I'm going to say. I've no contact with this person from, I don't know. It's only when I'm going to holiday that I'm speaking to them, blah blah blah. And then I'm gonna call him or call her, this uncle, this aunt. I don't know what I'm gonna say, and you're like, oh my god. And just subhanallah, you just say, okay, you just want to take some news from this person, and then you start to call this person, and everything goes well actually, because they're happy to hear you. But at the beginning, like to do the first step, I think this support is needed. And I don't know if you have the same thing in your country, but like maybe it's an Arabic thing or I don't know, whatever. Is most of the time it's like it's always the young people that need to call the old people. They always like, I'm not gonna call. They said she's younger than me, so she needs to call me. And I'm like, Mom, that's okay. I'm like, and or like you have like people around you say it's always us who call. They never do the effort for calling us. If you follow this mind, I think you're not gonna call anyone. I'm like, alhamdulillah, I'm gonna call because I think it's good to know about this part of the family. I would say, if you're waiting for people to call you or to ask after you, I think you're gonna wait forever. To be honest, like, because I think it's more brave when you do the first step, when you you just break this code between people, like between members of the family or friends, or do the first step, inshallah, and then there is like I think a stereotype or something like this. Like it's very good to, in particular, I think in Ramadan, it's like for Eid, etc. It's always a good occasion to call people and to be in contact.
I definitely think so. So I'm half Yemeni, and yeah, that whole tradition of like the younger person calling the older person is like a huge part of it. But I also honestly think that it's not a huge part of like culture. I was raised in Britain, so it feels like there's a cultural disconnect with that. So I kind of feel like you said, conversation should be two-way. I also do think that taking the first step is also the bravest step. But I think one of our speakers, we had the two guys from Dishun who were speaking, and they mentioned how when we were talking about togetherness, that psychologically there's a lot of studies that show that like loneliness is actually kind of one of the worst things for your health. Like it's worse than smoking and drinking and alcoholism, because essentially we as humans were created to be in a society. And I think in a time like this where we don't have like social connection, the quality social connection we usually have, I think it is important that we do try and reach out to each other where possible so we can continue that.
Exactly. And I think I've read somewhere like actually that one of the spirit that is the most important, or something that people are looking for, is the community spirit. And it's subhanAllah, something that we have in the Muslim community. And I think a lot of people are really interested by Islam through this community spirit, in particular, during Ramadan, this community spirit. And what we're doing through our Zoom sessions and the guest speaker, etc., is to bring this community spirit. And I've read that this spirit is so important, because like you say, there's people that are by themselves, and we've got a lot of issues in big cities with alcohol kind of things, etc. When you're alone, it's harder for you to do good things, I would say, or to have like, I don't know, to be more, I think you need this community spirit to be more happy, I would say. Now, of course, there is a balance like between being with people or being by yourself, but I think this community spirit is make you strong. You feel part of something, and yeah.
Sorry, my Athaan app's gone in the background. I'm really sorry about that. It's actually not the Athaan until about 3 minutes.
No worries. Inshallah. So we're gonna have ADEN in a few minutes as well. But I'm not sure.
Sorry, I've just been having location problems.
No worries. No worries.
What about? But no, I do think that another part of community spirit that we need to consider is also the elderly in our community. I think like in the UK, there's like the elderly community where usually they are actually, they're also usually quite isolated. And I think in the pandemic, it's been worsened too. And I think there is like value to reaching out to our elderlies in the community too. But we have 2 minutes before the Athaan, so I'm just gonna end that there. Thank you, Hawaz, and thank you, Ahmed, for sharing your reflections and your thoughts this Ramadan. I'd also like to say a thank you again to Slime Channel, our media partner this year, and also Arts Council UK for making this event possible. You can read more about how we fight world hunger with Islamic relief at iruk.co/RTP. Ramadan is the month of charity and giving, so we wanted to encourage you to support Ramadan Tent Project and help us continue our work. Your support is vital to keeping us going as the world transitions back to normalcy by helping us continue events like this one, bringing people from all around the world together, but also the Open Iftar, our Sunnah Fast, and our other projects. Please check out the link in our chat for more information. Any amount that you can donate is very beneficial and helpful, inshallah. You can donate at www.launchgood.com/RTP2021. So the Athaan should be here in like about a minute, so we could just spend a bit of time reflecting on ourselves.
Thank you, Huda.
اللهم إني لك صمت وبك آمنت وعلى رزقك أفطرت ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
So thank you again for our volunteers for giving these reflections. Jazakallah khair. And I really hope that everybody has a great Fatara. Assalamu alaikum.